history as the thing that guides your relationship is what's going to make you a people. That's right. That's going to make you a people. And if you're not a people, you can look alike all you want. You can suffer together all you want. You can dress alike, hairstyle alike. You can even talk alike and act stupid alike. But guess what? If you're not a people, you're going to be exploited alike by other peoples who are a people. Any one of us in here know how to make fried rice. You just put some oil in a pan, put some rice in a darn pan, and you fry it. And if you want some shrimp in there, you can take some little shrimp and you put it in the pan and you fry it. If you want to make some eggs in there, cut up little onions or something else. So why in the heck are we going to someone else's house or restaurant? Because they told you that some basic food presentation is theirs.
We can make it ourselves.
So somebody come and open a little dirty, filthy restaurant in the corner of our neighborhood, and we line up around the corner to buy something that we can make at home and feed more people for the same price. You know why? Because you don't have a real identity, because you're not a real people and they are a real people. Somebody has a pie, they call it. Somebody was in a cultural situation of some poverty, and so they had some rotten tomatoes, and they had some spoiled cheese, and they had some bread without yeast, and it came out to be pizza.
Right.
And so we're going to take somebody else's poverty food and make them millionaires. Because they've identified this food and themselves as being the same thing, because they have an identity and you don't have one. So you think by buying their identity extension, which is their food, that's going to give you an identity. So you can say, I'm eating Chinese food, I'm eating Italian pizza, I'm wearing Italian shoes. Shoes are nothing but some leather and some threads. So how does it, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get you to get to where I'm at, because what we have to do is not as difficult as we say. Because even though they've closed your schools, they've taken your history out.
Yeah.
Everybody got a living room. Open your own school. How are you going to tell me that I'm going to look at my babies? And I got 8 of them babies. The youngest is 36, I think. Yeah, he's still going to be trouble. He called while I was sitting over there. He thinks he's the father. And then I got 22 of their children. They're my babies. And I'm blessed to have lived long enough to have those babies, because for all, according to what probability of statistics should have said, I should have been gone. You know? But here I am. Somebody says, you keep recreating yourself every few years. Yes, I do. Because I be hanging with the God in me.
That's right.
You know, okay, this is resurrection time. If your schools have been taken over by the state of whiteness, and they won't teach what you want taught, what in the hell is stopping you from getting a video and a book and sitting in your living room with your children and teaching them? And you have families, invite the family over. One weekend we at this home, the next weekend we do it at this home, the next weekend at this home. And then as the family gets strong, invite some of your friends together, and guess what you end up having? A university of your own.
That's right.
Doesn't cost that much money.
That's right.
Back that up again. You don't even have to call them freedom schools. Just say, I'm calling Love My Children's School. Love My Children's School. I like the freedom schools, you know, we were part of it. It's the same concept. What we had is the freedom school. So let's try to see if we can say we love you enough not to just sit around saying that they took your historical food away, but we love you enough to give you that historical food ourselves.
That's right.
Now history is not just about heroes and heroines and dates and stuff. We made a lot of doggone mistakes too that we better study and understand and work it out.
That's right.
History is not just about the men. History is about the woman and the man.
That's right.
Our community is not about the woman being this and the man being this and the woman is God and the man. That's a bunch of bull. What this thing is about, the family.
That's right.
And you can't have one unless you got a man and a woman who make an agreement to recreate themselves.
That's right.
And let me tell you something. There is no holy book in the world that was written by God. All was written by men and women. And there's no idea that a man and woman can have greater than their capacity to create. You didn't quite get that. Let me find a simpler way to say it. I cannot create with my mind anything greater than what is possible for me to do with my hands.
Okay.
And so you need to go, that's why history becomes important. Because you need to go say, why did our ancestors write the pyramid text? You think God wrote the Bible and the Quran and the Torah? Well, go back all the way to Egypt to the pyramid text. And then read where God Amen says, when I realized that I existed, standing beside me was the feminine principle called Ma'at. He didn't say I bring Ma'at into being. He said when I realized I existed, this feminine phenomena that creates harmony and balance in the universe existed beside me.
Yeah.
Now our ancestors wrote that because that's how they understood reality. And then he goes on in this pyramid text. Our ancestor says that the divine says that I created everything that my heart desired. And when I had done that, I then expanded in all of it. Meaning everything that is also me, the divinity. But the cool part, the last statement in that little bitty dissertation in the pyramid text about creation, when Amun, who's now Amun-Ra, is finished with everything. You know, he done spit out Shu and coughed up Tefnut. Shu is the air and Tefnut is the moisture. Then the air and the moisture created the earth, Geb, and created the heavens. Nut. And then Nut, the heavens and the earth, meaning the elements and the gases and the electrical currents and the sun and all that stuff, then created a Sar and a Set, and what's the sister name? Help me out. Nephthys and her husband, Set, meaning the human beings. And they even had a Garden of Eden. They didn't call it Garden of Eden, but they had the tree with the fruit and the people in it. So where did somebody get that story from? Now the book I'm talking about is written about 8,000 to 10,000 years before the books you read from.
That's
Now,
right.
where did the story come from? But the part I liked about it that was really sweet, because when God does all of this stuff, creates all of this stuff according to the Africans, he says, but I came from my mother, Nun. He said the primordial principle that produced all that exists had to be feminine. And they call it the primordial waters, Nu. If we understand the story of the mother, the father, and the child, that becomes Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, or Mary, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost, however they want to work that out. All they were talking about is the man, the woman, and their offspring. That is the symbol of God in Africa, not a man, not a woman. It is the man, the woman, and the offspring that is the symbol of divinity. But they took that away from you by creating the spookism of the Holy Ghost. You see? Just read it for yourself.
Right.
There's a book called The Pyramid Text, The Coffin Text, and the Book of the Coming Forth by Night. But let's come back to more contemporary stuff. When we talk about white supremacy taking things away from you, they live in a place called Europe, named after the granddaughter of an Egyptian pharaoh, Europa. All you gotta do is read Herodotus, book 2. You remember when some of us were young, because I'm 71, I'm above some people here, but there's a few of my brothers and sisters here who can work with me. When we were in school, they said the father of history is whom? Herodotus. But then black folks started reading the books. He ain't father of history now. He don't know what he's talking about now. Because the father of history wrote a whole volume about black folks. Ruling the world, creating the world, giving Greeks to gods, teaching them civilization, teaching them geometry, etc., etc., etc. So if you get a chance, and it's not hard to find, get Herodotus book 2. And for those of us brothers and sisters who are into the Islamic history, which is our history too, get a book written in the 8th century Iraq by a brother named Al-Jahiz. Al-Jahiz writes 9 short books. Today we would call them 9 long essays. But he writes this, he lives in Iraq, he's a black man in Iraq, because most of the people in Iraq those days were black people. And so he writes this book, where he explains how the Prophet Muhammad is black, all of the principal people around him is black. This is the 8th century, this is not John Henry Clark, all right? And he talks about the sister who's like a Florence Nightingale. She heads up the Prophet Muhammad's medical corps. So we need to study our history, because it will change how we do everything we do when we do what we do. Then you'll understand what white supremacy is. You're not going to understand what white supremacy has done until you know what it has done. So if you don't know who you are and what was taken away from you, you won't know that something was even taken away. That's why history comes important, because history is going to tell you what was taken away. How can you repair a damage if you don't know what was damaged?
That's right.
If you're gonna, even if I had an artery damage, I have to know what it was before it got damaged in order to put it back right. So your fractured consciousness and your broken identity, you must know what it is before the European came into our space. Otherwise you can say, I'm building a black nation. But if you think you can build a black nation with white ideology, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it unless you're going to spend 500 years enslaving and murdering African people by the millions. You're not going to do it unless you're able to murder a whole continent of people who live here in North America. You're not going to do it unless you carry out a continued genocide in the rest of the world called imperialism and colonialism. And it's going to take you about 2,000 years to get that set up, and then you can catch up to where he's at. And you're not going to do that because he's not going to let you take his place. You have to find out who you are and how would you solve the problem. How would you solve that problem? Yes, we were the first physicians. You can read the Ibis Papyrus and out of Egypt and the Smith Papyrus, where they're talking about gynecology and they're talking about brain surgery and they're talking about, we were doing all these things when they were in the caves.
That's right.
And now they make you think that you can't put a Band-Aid on your hands. So how do we return ourselves and give ourselves the confidence that we need to build strong families, to stop the killings? Why is there killings and shooting in our community from New York to Chicago, LA to Detroit?
Yeah.
Why are we killing each other?
We don't know ourselves.
Because we don't value each other. And why don't we value each other? Because we don't value ourselves.
Yeah.
If I don't value me, how in the hell can I value you? And if I don't value you, I'll do anything to you. So how do we get this value back, this worth back of what we are? That very simple thing that people think is too simple to work. Study your history.
That's it, that's it.
If you think it's too simple to work, try it. If it's such a bad idea, why do they go so far to deny us that thing? And then you can put in context the revolutions that produce the things called religion. Because Christianity could work for us if we knew who we were. Islam can work for us if we weren't imitating the Greek and Roman children we call the Arabs. You see? But we're not going to have any of those systems work for us as long as we are imitating the people who would impose them on us in a way that they can't work for us. So, white supremacy, no such thing. They're not supreme to nobody or nothing. So I like to say, before coming at this time, I got something. And you don't put a stopwatch in the pocket. Okay. It becomes so important to understand what white supremacy really is. And what it is the false notion of being supreme.
Wow.
They're not supreme. It's a false notion of white supremacy. There's no such thing as white supremacy. There's the false notion. There's this distorted reality of someone who has not elevated himself above barbarity, that he's supreme because he can take the life. But here's what Africa would have helped us with had we been able to retain our culture, had we been able to retain our spirituality. I'm a priest in the Yoruba tradition. I'm a priest of Oya.
Yes, yes.
And Oya is this beautiful woman, metaphorically with locks, that runs through the forest and changes things. She's symbolized by the wind, because the wind blows things. She's the hurricane, she's the tempest. The wind blows away the stale, old, and allow the fresh new to come into being. So she's the symbol of change and process, right? And in that tradition, I had to learn a lot of theology. And I do have a doctorate in theology.
Yes, yes, I know.
You know, a doctor of divinity.
Yeah.
And I taught religion at City College for 18 years. That was my primary subject. But in our tradition, coming out of the people we call, there's no such thing as a Yoruba religion, by the way. There's a Yoruba people that practice an African spiritual system, which we refer to as the Yoruba religion, should be properly called Ifa or Orisha, if we use the Yoruba language, with Ifa meaning the wisdom of nature, and Orisha meaning the powers and the force in nature. Nature and the cosmology, they don't separate the cosmology and nature from one another. It's the whole thing. But anyway, in our African understanding, we have embedded in all of our tradition this concept of reincarnation. And in the African understanding of reincarnation, we are born back into the family that we originally manifested as a human being in, even if it was 5 million years ago. So most of you sitting in this audience, you are your grandparents or your great-grandparents.
That's right.
Come back. That's what African culture would teach you.
That's
It would
right.
teach you that there's no such thing as death.
That's right.
That the 400 plus elements that make up the body, the matter that you live in, when it dies, when you leave this matter, it deteriorates and go back into those 400 something elements. And if you're not stuck in some metal casket, you go back into the ground and be the fuel that would, the moisture that would evaporate back up as rain, that would come back down as the water you drink, or the other minerals would be in the plant that you eat, but you would just recycle in nature. And continue to be. But what they said about the specific human comings and going, this is actually, in our tradition, we had 7 times to come and go to perfect ourselves. And each of the 7 comings and goings, we had 8 steps we had to master in terms of ethical, moral, principle development of your character. And then in doing so, if you reached that 7 times and you hadn't done this, then you had to go back to your ancestors. And they had to kind of refashion you and restructure you. White folks took that, they call that purgatory. Yes, they did. They just took your stuff and gave it another name. If you had done good in your cycle and you completed the 7, which very few people do, then you don't come back anymore. You become what they call an Orisha, a Loa, a force in nature that the rest of us can appeal to help us solve the problems here. Matter of fact, in our tradition, if someone was getting ready to go into the Ancestor Realm, you're supposed to whisper in their ears and give them the message there to take to the ancestors. To tell the ancestors what's going on down here. This is the problems we have. If you send somebody, please send someone who can help us solve these contradictions. And we wish you well. And we tell the person, don't eat, and then one of the traditions, they don't eat worms and stuff like that. You eat only good food, so when you get to the ancestors, you'll be healthy. And then when the baby comes, the reason in Africa a child gets outdoored after 8 days or so, because it takes that long for the family and the elders to figure out who came back.
That's right.
Who is this person?
That's right.
And that's how you get named. We pick our name before people come. That's totally inappropriate. Totally inappropriate.
Gee.
You're supposed to name a child only after the elders in that family, in that community, figure out which spirit this child most resembles from the movements and things and the looks and stuff, the smell and other things we get from it. And then we introduce that child to the community and say, this is who this is. That's our culture. They've taken that away from us. So studying history helps you learn some things. If you knew your body was not you, then nobody can threaten you with the taking away of it, and you have the courage to fight whomever you need to fight to get back what you need to get back for yourself and your community.
That's right.
So, white supremacy, the false notion of white supremacy and racism as practice here in Detroit. We said if you don't get economic, politics, and culture together, you can't provide food, clothing, and shelter for yourself and your family. What is economics? It's the wealth in your ecology.
That's right.
What's in your ecology as wealth? Real estate. What else is in your ecology as wealth? The largest part of your wealth is the tax revenues that's taken from everybody, sent to Washington. Washington steals what they're going to steal,
Right.
sent to the state. State steals what they're going to steal, they send it to Detroit.
That's right.
Everybody else has got some kind of mechanism in place to take that wealth and use it for their communities except us.
That's right.
They know how to mine the wealth of the tax dollars, but we don't know how to mine the wealth of the tax
That's
dollars.
right.
That's what economics is. Echo from the ecology, you know, the root word is echo, ecology. So the wealth that you're talking about, that you call economics, is what you can harvest from your ecology. But you have to find out what wealth is in your ecology. The other wealth that's in your ecology come from circulating your capital.
That's right.
That means you have to control the retail aspect of your economic system. Meaning you must have and own the store.
That's right.
Otherwise you won't shop there.
Very good.
It means you have to, once you can establish your retail, then you've got to establish your wholesale.
That's right.
Sir.
I think Dr. Anderson, Claude Anderson, tells us that the dollar must circulate in our
sir.
community at least 10 to 15 times in order for riches to be turned into wealth.
That's right.
We have the riches of over $1 trillion, but we don't have any wealth from that riches to talk about.
Very good.
Because our system of understanding how to circulate those riches to make it into wealth, we can't get there yet.
That's right.
We're still confused because white supremacy has told us that we have so many of these differences that we can't reckon how to organize as one unit. You know, we call ourselves the black community. You're not a black community.
That's right.
You're a bunch of black neighborhoods in a white community,
That's right.
or an Arab community,
Hey.
or Latino community, or an Asian community. If you wanted to be a community is a group of people who have a similar culture, similar language, similar religion, usually have some blood relation, but definitely social relationship, and live in the same geographic space. That's a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Now, a community is all of that except you own the business, you own the real estate, and you control the public services like police, fire, and schools.
Very good.
So if you want to become a community, you have to take your $1 trillion that you gave away to those people who would not urinate on you if you were on fire,
Come on now.
right? And you got to take that $1 trillion, and you've got to find a way to spend it with yourself.
That's right.
The only reason our sons and daughters don't have jobs, because we take the money we make, and we give it to other people who make sure their sons and daughters have jobs. And then somebody tries to make you feel guilty
That's
when
right.
you say you're going to boycott somebody because they support Donald Trump, who will say outrageous racist thing. And I don't know who this dude is, but he's at least validated that movie. Because if we had made this movie with Donald Trump, they'd think we were just blowing smoke about white supremacy and racism.
He is. Right.
But thanks to Donald,
That's right. He's
the white racism have just rose up like a Frankenstein out of the rain. You know? And they're expressing themselves all over the place, validating what we're saying.
That's right.
So we don't have to convince you about racism anymore because Donald has done that job. What we've got to convince you of is that you can overcome racism. And the best way to overcome racism is to kill the racist in you.
That's right.
That's right.
Oh, y'all scared of that. Kill the racist in you. If you can kill the racist in yourself, meaning the values, interests, and principles of Europeans that dominate your character. For those of us who don't like the big word like paradigm, You know, this paradigm, meaning how we get the information that we use to solve our problems. How do we get the mindset that allow us to take information in a certain way and format in order to solve our everyday problem. Well, you can't take the information from the person who's trying to imprison you to then free you. It
Don't work.
it's not going to work. So if you think that you can have that value system, then you need to take a look at this book. I think it's called the Threefold Lotus Sutra, and there's another book called the Vedic Hymns, where it's breaking down a human being. This is in the Buddhist system, which is the derivative of the African system, and someone is born like a blank page, but it has two directions to go in. You can go in the direction of knowledge, or you can go in the direction of ignorance. If you move in the direction where ignorance becomes your dominant developmental pattern, then you will move into the area of desire for things that you can't figure out how to create or how to get, because you have not educated yourself. And then your desire will lead to envy of those who have those things that you desire. And then the envy as a part of your character will lead to the jealousy that you will have because someone have the things that you desire and you can't have. And jealousy almost always leads to conflict and to violence, death, and destruction. Don't take what I'm just saying lightly.
Okay.
White culture moves on that path.
Okay.
If you go into the culture of Africa, it's predicated on having knowledge. Knowledge says that you need to then get understanding. Understanding requires your developing wisdom, which is simply the appropriate application of knowledge. And then that leads to enlightenment, which then allows you to build in harmony and peace. Now, when we look at white supremacy, we need to know what it took away from us and what it gave to us. It gave us a way that don't solve problems. And it took away from us a way to solve problems. And I'll end with this, I only have a few minutes, but I want to talk about some of the things they take away. In Africa, almost everywhere I went, and I've been going there for like almost 40 years. And I've married a lot of people over there and here. Traditional marriage in Africa has nothing to do with the two individuals, except their ambassadors. It has to do with the two families who decided to unite.
That's right.
For the greater good, to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for themselves. But the man and the woman who represent this union, they come together because there is all the energy, you know that thing we call love? Now in the West, what you call love is usually lust, desire,
That's right.
you know, need, attachment. I'm on my 2-minute mark, I got it. And so we call that love, but that's not love. Love is, in the African context, when you learn to develop the divinity in you, and the divinity in you, or the God in you, recognize someone else who has developed the divinity in them, and then the God in you develop a relationship to the God in that person. That's African love. And then those two persons come together to represent the union of the two families. And that's what the whole ceremony is about, marrying the two families, not the two individuals.
Okay.
The two individuals have married themselves by the virtue of the God in one recognizing the God in the other, and the God in one appreciating the God in himself, appreciating the God in the other. So white supremacy have taken away your human beingness. In order to get your human beingness back, you have to begin to reprogram yourself with your history, with your culture, with your concept of life, your concept of love, your concept of death, your concept of friendship, your concept of sisterhood, your concept of brotherhood, your concept of family. You have to revisit all of those things in order to reconstruct yourself. So that you can provide for yourself and your family food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security. That's the bottom line. Don't lie to yourself. And to do that, you know you must take control of economic politics and culture. So thank you very much, brothers and sisters.